First interviewed at YouTube, I was like paralyzed with imposter syndrome. And then, 4 or 5 years later, I'm backstage at this really crazy event. I have a team of 4 people that I'm leading.
Welcome back to the podcast where we explore the creator economy and how you can succeed in it as a creator. Now, our guest today has a pretty impressive resume. They've worked at YouTube and helped run their Instagram for 4 years whilst collaborating with creators like Emma Chamberlain. Hunter Ellenberger is an independent creative director who runs a small design studio, Star Quality, where they specialize in brand and social campaigns for creators, artists, and charismatic companies, including YouTube, and helps them create and direct content that promotes some pretty cool partnerships between the company and artists such as Taylor Swift, Lil Baby, and New Jeans. Hunter, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so good. It's a beautiful day in New York. Spring is setting in, so my spirits are high. It's good.
Yeah, and contrast to everyone, 7 a.m., my spirits are also high. I just have coffee in my hand. So if you're watching this, if you see me taking a lot of sips of this coffee, then you'll probably see me have a breakdown with my mic off because I run out of coffee while I'm just talking. But we're all good with that. Hunter, yeah. I'd love to just give some context to the creators listening to this podcast. You worked at YouTube. Could you tell us how you sort of got started at YouTube? How did you end up there? And then just take us through the last sort of few years to where you are now, starting Star Quality.
Yeah. So I ended up at YouTube after spending maybe 6 or 7 years as more of a like traditional art director. My first job out of college was at a big digital ad agency in New York. And I worked in like pharmaceutical marketing, which was like not sexy or particularly creative. And so I kind of had bounced around from there. I did a startup moment, and then through a friend of a friend, they referred me whenever YouTube marketing was looking for a designer and kind of content creator to bring in-house when they were building kind of an in-house like creative studio basically for their social team. And so I went into the job interview thinking like I wasn't qualified. It was just like crazy. Like I have like crazy imposter syndrome, but somehow I got the gig. And because I had such a like deep background in visual direction and design direction on the social team, I kind of started being known as like the Instagram boy. And so every time YouTube had a campaign, whether it's like, a cultural moment or their end of year stuff, I worked on the infamous rewind that they no longer do. Yeah. I saw that happen the first year I was there, which was really crazy. But I kind of like would interpret those big brand initiatives through the Instagram lens. And then day to day, I would also just come up with like everyday content for us to post to highlight other creators and cool things happening on YouTube. So I did that for 4 years, and it was like I made some of the best work of my career. I learned so much. I got to work with like so many awesome creators around the world. Like I got to travel a lot. It was super, super fun, but I have always kind of had a dream of having my own design studio since just for like a decade, I guess. And after just kind of feeling burnout from the quarantine years and, all the corporate elements of working at a company like Google, I gave myself permission to take like 3 months off. And I talked to my old boss and team and kind of told them what I was scheming with how I wanted to build a studio. And so we started working together, where now I work as kind of their ad agency on the social team. And so I work with them on campaigns where normally it would have been like an ad agency doing it. I now get to do it. And that's like my favorite part, is being hands-on and actually doing a lot of the creative production and design. And so I've been doing that as Star Quality with small teams for a little less than a year and a half. And then also, now that I have my own studio, I have the freedom to work with other clients. So part of what I love doing is working with creators directly to help them build out their like visual language and their world. So I'm wearing merch for Catherine Cohen. She's a comedian, and I did her tour merch and tour art, and that type of stuff has been super fun to work directly with creators. So that's kind of my zone.
Who is your dream creator or influencer celebrity to work with?
Yeah, I think my dream client, who I keep a lot of tabs on, is Alex Consani. She's well, she would first blew up on TikTok. She makes like really gorgeously unhinged clips. She moved to New York and would like sing Lana Del Rey songs at the top of her lungs on the subway in front of all these strangers, like just like really attention grabbing, chaotic stuff. But she's hilarious. And then she's also a model. And I think that's been really interesting to see her straddle this world that is like fashion that's often really buttoned up and serious, but be this really playful, entertaining creator at her core. And so with certain people like Alex, like that's sort of part of the mantra of my company called Star Quality, is identifying these really standout creators who have this like versatile way of presenting themselves and that kind of it factor. And so like I could see her launching maybe like a fashion brand or something, since she's in that space. And my dream would be to help her do the branding and the website and the content and just creative direct her vision, basically.
When you were working on YouTube, what was the most exciting thing that you got to do? Because you said you kind of come from a background with art directing, and you'd never really done anything sort of the way you would have had to do at YouTube there. What were your expectations going into YouTube as a job? Like, did you think, oh, this is going to be super daunting still? Yep, the imposter syndrome's there. I've got hired, okay. But I'm imagining that's still lingering at that point. And then once you got in through the doors, what was the most exciting thing that sort of fell in your lap pretty quickly?
Yeah, I mean, on the imposter syndrome front, I feel like I still feel that like all the time. I think that's just part like built in. And maybe I think creators of all types feel that, like, you know, on the professional side of creativity or the social media side, wherever you fall, it's like to make something creative is very subjective and vulnerable. So I feel like there's a lot of times where you feel like, you know, is this right? Are people going to think I know what I'm doing? But I think one of the upsides of my time at Google that was very unexpected was that Google is such a data company. So a lot of what I would create, there were numbers to show if it was good or not. And so obviously that can be really unhealthy too. Like you don't want to always like follow the numbers because it's algorithms and all types of things out of your control. But I think like when you do have enough sort of hits under your belt, you can kind of be like, okay, I do know what I'm doing. So in that way, just like having so much influence over the Instagram account every day, I feel like I kind of learned like I am skilled at this and everything. But project wise, a couple of things come to mind. Like one of my earliest sort of wins was I think it was the 4th of July weekend in 2018, probably. I had been working at YouTube for a couple of months, and I was like starting to live and breathe the sort of creator landscape, because I'm 31, not like a legally millennial is what I always say. So like I wasn't super plugged into all the like more Gen Z, you know, celebrity creator scene at all. And then when I started working there, I just was like trying to get as much of it as I can into my head because I wanted to understand the world. And anyways, that 4th of July weekend, I was just like binging a bunch of YouTube, and I came across Emma Chamberlain and the Sister Squad and that whole era. And I was just like, this girl, Emma, is like so hysterical, and she felt so fresh in the way she was editing her videos at the time. And so I went back to my team and was like, I think we should try to like do a Q&A with her. And as big as she already was in 2018, like at YouTube internally, there wasn't a ton of awareness about her. And so my friend Diana and I like hosted a Q&A with Emma like virtually, and she took over our Instagram for the day, and we called it a UNA for like a YouTube Q&A. And Emma's just appeal and power of being like this massive influencer was so evident. She drove so many views to our story. It ended up being the most viewed story YouTube had ever posted up until that time, which just speaks to like Emma's audience and how much they adore her. And this was back in 2018. So I think that was cool because it was like, you know, successful by the numbers at my job, but also like getting to work directly with Emma, who I've admired, and I love her content and I watch her content like to this day. I think it was a cool win on both fronts.
Well, what do you think about the way Emma presents herself on camera? Now, I can't say I've watched any of Emma's content, but I do understand that a creator that will grow very rapidly and will go viral constantly will then become a mainstay in the names of that space and that influencer realm there. They all present themselves as themselves, and they just let themselves be themselves. They don't put on a fake persona generally, because people can see through that straight away and they're going to get sick of it. What do you think it was about Emma's personality that just was charismatic and just drew people into watching her?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first word that comes to mind, which I think is kind of a buzzword in this world, is authenticity, but I think it comes up so much because it is true. And thinking back to Emma's earliest content, she had this editing style where like she would, you know, film her vlogs and then it would cut to her editing and it would say me editing, like, and she would insert little comments or like kind of, you know, be a little self-deprecating or something, and it kind of broke the fourth wall. And then she really popularized that, and then you saw it across all of these other creators where it was like me editing. But I think like, and maybe she, you know, who's to say, I'm not a YouTube anthropologist, so who's to say that she started that format, but she really did become like kind of the face of that popular editing style. And I think the me editing speaks to the real person. It's like she's not presenting this perfectly manicured vlog that's like, you know, a lot of the lifestyle YouTubers will show you only the best pieces. It was like cutting in and being like, why did I say that like this? And that just makes her like relatable and human. And then I feel like I've seen her talk about in interviews, like, you know, even having acne and not being in full glam, and especially in like the kind of, you know, 2016 to 2020 era where everyone was like contoured in, you know, Kylie cosmetics and stuff, like Emma just felt very real. And so I do think it's like that kind of authentic point of view, and then also just her creative vision, because the me editing was such a fresh thing. And I think what's interesting is she kind of took a break from YouTube, and when she returned, you know, after everyone had copied her, she reestablished her video aesthetic, and now it's very like artful. And her dad is an oil painter, like he's a fine artist, and it's credited, like, I can't remember his name, but, you know, Father Chamberlain is the cinematography credit on every episode. And so it just has this very like almost like, you know, like cinematic element to it. And I feel like that just also speaks to her ability to like zig when others zag and stay fresh and like create trends. So yeah, I love just watching her evolve. And something else, I work on campaigns for pop stars and, you know, for YouTube and their partnerships with pop stars. But I think that you see that all the time with artists who have like eras, like Taylor Swift's Eras tour. Like every couple of years they reset because new things inspire them. And Emma is sort of in that way, like a pop star where, you know, every once in a while her approach to social media changes a lot. So yeah, she has a lot of really fascinating things to study, I guess.
And it probably relates to every creator. Now, you mentioned Emma just felt really, we're not going to say the A word, we're going to say real, all right?
Yeah.
Felt real through the camera. And you see that even in it's taken over in short form content. Let's say TikTok's evolved massively over the last 4 years, where you could go in there and just dance and that was it. Yeah. Now it's all about showing up on camera, being as real as possible. And people just love that because they can spot it from a mile away when you're forcing something, whether you're forcing your voice or you're just trying to be someone you're not, because it's like people are getting really good at analyzing behaviors of people on camera now, and all the little nuances that come with the way they present themselves, and they'll be like, oh, that's a red flag, like out of nowhere. So it's almost like real X creativity is what will make you stand out as a content creator in today's creator landscape. And I feel like I've seen that with all of these creators who are super real. Just they don't care if their camera angle isn't perfect or that the lighting isn't the best. As long as they can pop the camera down, talk about or say what they want to say, and it's a bit flurry and the camera's moving everywhere and they're still talking, and their real persona is just captivating and it's capturing attention. But then there's this fun element of creativity. It doesn't have to be super much. Super much is not even a phrase. Anyway, it doesn't have to be much, but just one piece of unique framing or something that just makes their content uniquely them in their with the way their brain creative works. You can say like Emma Chamberlain, yep, vlogging, inserts, me editing, self-deprecating jokes, just kind of like having fun in the middle of the editing. Like, why did I say that? That's the unique angle that anyone can create in their content. Yeah, there's too many content creators, not enough, but like there's a lot of content creators and everybody's trying to stand out. What makes you you? What's something fun that comes to your mind when you're creating content? I don't know how much experience you have creating content for yourself, but
right.
When you're at when you were doing the stuff for Instagram, for YouTube, how did you lean into that? Oh, let's try that. Oh, let's try this. Oh, let's try that. Was it a process you had to go through? Oh, we should do this. Maybe not. Or did you have a bit more spontaneity, a spontaneous control? Were you able just to try new things and explore things, and that's why you were able to grow the account of Instagram, of YouTube's Instagram, from 11 to sort of 27? Like, what creative angles did you take to make it stand out?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question, because the first thing that comes to mind are the challenges, actually, because I think you mentioned, Emma is real, and something that I've learned working with brands versus creators is because brands are not real, it's very hard to seem authentic. And with YouTube, I think we struggled with that a lot because YouTube's used by 2 billion people in the world. So it's 2 billion different relationships to this product. So like on social, it was really hard to think of, what can appeal to this audience and stuff. But on the other hand, I definitely view social as sort of a living focus group. And it was like just iterating, trying new things, seeing what the response is, optimizing it. Like, one thing that comes to mind was for Instagram stories, like when Instagram started rolling out more features a couple years ago, like quizzes and polls and all of those things where you can actually like engage directly. We were coming up with a lot of like game formats for people. So it'd maybe be like creator trivia or something like that. And I realized at one point, you could almost build, like, there's ways to approach it in like a creative storytelling way where you can build intrigue. So like there was this game called Play by Play, and you would see like a glitchy video of, a clue that's sort of related to a creator's lore. So like for like Casey Neistat, it was like a drone and the Statue of Liberty because he's so like New York oriented and everything. And on the last slide, we were like, swipe up to see who it is. And so that mystery of like, oh, well, I think I know it's Casey, but am I sure? We kind of like hacked the behavior. And then we got like the most swipe ups that had ever, or like link clicks that had ever happened because of that mystery. And then that ultimately helped, Casey get new fans potentially, and drove more people to his page. Because a big part of our strategy was, supporting the creators on YouTube. So I think, yeah, like it's tough for brands to feel real, but as far as like marketers and everyone or marketing yourself, it's definitely like playing and having fun and trying new things and just kind of seeing like it'll gradually grow the more you know, experiment. Um, and that was something else popped in my head. Another brand that is really famous for their TikTok is Duolingo. And I feel like maybe they have succeeded in that way because they let the mascot, like the bird, be physically real and like shake its butt and like do all kinds of crazy things. And yeah, not that every brand should do that because now it would feel kind of cliche, like you're borrowing it. But I feel like they kind of hacked a good formula of through probably a lot of experimentation on their own, you know, end of how to be real and relatable as a company who's ultimately just, you know, sort of an idea.
I just had this thought of the Duolingo costume sitting at a desk and replying to Instagram comments, just like a live camera of the Duolingo bird, just replying to comments, send, and then the comment flies out, and then a little giggle or something, and then just that kind of like take it the next level of show the bird in the costume in real life, typing on a keyboard, sending the comment out, and then having a little giggle. Something like that would be absolutely hilarious. Or like, but put that in like a basement somewhere deep in the bottom of Duolingo's building, or like in this really pristine, high-level, high-rise building room where they're just person in a bird costume. And I feel like other brands could do the same, like if they have a mascot of some sort of shape or form, where they could do that and just to have a lot more fun with it. And I'd just love to be it sounds like a Gen Z 21-year-old marketing girl who is probably behind the first comment and now is just running with it. But I think they could just have a lot more fun with it. And on Instagram, like TikTok, I think TikTok is the place where you're getting these brands, they're popping in, they're being funny in the comments and they're engaging with people more. And that's making them more likable and real because it's like, oh, that's funny. We're getting away from that buttoned up professionalism behind the brand. And it's just more, yep, come see behind the scenes. Let's have fun. Like, yeah, we're funny too, you know, that kind of thing.
No, for sure. And that was when you said earlier, you know, people are so aware of when you're sort of like faking it on camera and are looking for that real thing. I think these brands, like people are now seeing brands and are like, there's a social media manager behind this. And this is kind of an extension of them. And so like, even when they're weird, you know, and if they're doing humor well, I think the audience understands like there are real people. So I think that's another thing is just trying to bring your company or as a creator, your authentic, I said the A word, but authentic vibe.
You said it before and I didn't pull you up on it.
We should have a counter, but it's hard not to say. But yeah, like another example outside of Duolingo, but the Empire State Building account has also been like a huge one that, you know, people point to as a case study. And part of their real behavior is that the Empire State Building is a Swiftie. And so they ride the kind of Swiftie chatter of the internet. And I also think it's kind of like the art movement Dadaism from like the, you know, 1920s, like that comes up a lot when I read things about Gen Z humor. And it's interesting, like with Dadaism, like that came out after World War I, and it was sort of how people processed all of that crazy trauma was just through these like absurd things. And you see that in sort of just, you know, since 2016 on, just the world's been a mess and COVID happened, and I think people are looking for escapism. So when the Empire State Building just has these, you know, rudimentary eyes, like that TikTok filter on it, and it's like talking about Taylor Swift, it's like none of that makes sense, but people get to escape and laugh and everything. And so I think beyond brands, like, you know, humor and escapism and absurdism is, most people are going to like respond well to that. And I don't have a ton of, I'm not super active like creating content for myself personally, but I do create some for my studio. And that was a whole existential problem I cracked with like a lot of therapy, was like, how do I want to present my studio? And, you know, you mentioned with there's just so many creators wanting to stand out. I think the way to not stand out, obviously, is to look at what everybody else is doing. And so when I was thinking about launching my studio, I felt really nervous about it because I felt like I was being a weirdo in my approach, because all of the peers that I have that maybe launch like a creative practice or a design studio, they, you know, wear a black turtleneck and it's very like, I'm a designer and I'm a serious like designer. And I was just like, that is not the type of vibe that comes natural to me. Like, I'm a really silly, playful person and I want my work to be silly and playful. And so I put together this announcement post where I cosplayed as all of these public figures with iconic brands. So I was, you know, Paris Hilton in a juicy tracksuit. I did Anna Wintour, Guy Fieri, like all of these people. But it's like, for a graphic design company to sort of be satirical felt really risky, but I feel like it was effective, and like my whole network knew I had a studio, and you know, it got a lot of good feedback and everything. And mostly I'm just proud of it that I was brave enough to like go out with that. So I think just being silly when it feels right and doing what feels right is always going to lead to better results.
So I'm going to come clean here, and there's a part of my personality I don't show on camera because I've always wanted to present myself in a certain way. Right? I can speak really well. I'm like, I'm going to use that. But outside of what I do, my day to day, the amount of times I just start dancing, twerking. I don't even know why I'm saying this, but
I wouldn't take you for a twerker.
Seriously, exactly. I don't let people in, but I just bust a move whenever I can. I don't care where I am, if I'm in the gym, on public transport. Like if I got a good song in my head, or if I'm driving in the car and I'm vibing behind someone, and I'm like, hope someone doesn't look in their rearview mirror and think that I'm cussing them out, because that's not happening. I also say a lot of ridiculous memes that are from 10 years ago, and I'll be sitting there going, what? Why did I say that? Where did that come from? What triggered that Vine catch line from my mind or something? And I hide that in because I'm like, I don't know how it's going to go. But I think there's the mix of like, people are just afraid to show that.
Yeah.
And then there are those who feel that fear and do it anyway and put themselves out there, and they just show up as their really real, authentic self. So if you're a creator listening to this, watching this, there's a part of you you're probably scared to show on camera. But what do you do when the cameras aren't on and there's nobody around? What quirky things do you do? I know for me, I have just random impulsive thoughts, like the Duolingo bird thing. That, I was sitting here, you were talking, I was like, oh, that's impulsive. Really impulsive. Why did that come out? I'm like, you can lean into those a bit more. You'll probably stand out as yourself on camera as that creator that you want to be. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. I don't even know. See, that just came out super. Anyway, let's move on from me twerking. Get that image out of your mind, and nobody generate that with AI, because I don't need that living anywhere. In terms of what you've accomplished in, say, since 2018, working at YouTube, I don't know if you started in 2018 or 2017 late, but what's the one thing that you're most proud of since you've pivoted into the creator economy in terms of a piece of work that you've done? Is it the Emma Chamberlain UNA? What is it?
I think actually last year I got to work for, it was another YouTube project. They are the official live stream partner of Coachella. And so I got to go to Coachella and work in their backstage studio where all of the artists come through. And so that was just so fun because, I mean, for a variety of levels, I got to meet so many people I'm a fan of. We were doing really silly content like a game of truth or dare. So I made like an Instagram filter that gave the artist a random truth or a dare. And we had all these crazy, props. So like we had Doechii had to put her hand in a mystery box and was like screaming at the top of her lungs. And Peso Pluma had to do a dab of like hot sauce, like in the kind of vein of Hot Ones and stuff. So it was just like fun content we were filming. And then also just the scale. Like I feel like that's something I'm most proud of. Like I mentioned, when I first interviewed at YouTube, I was like paralyzed with imposter syndrome. And then 4 or 5 years later, I'm backstage at this really crazy event. I have a team of 4 people that I'm leading. We filmed with over 100 artists and made over 600 pieces of content, like between the 2 weekends. And I got to just kind of party and go to Coachella at night. So like, I don't know, I feel like that was just like a really like pinch me moment. I'm proud of the creative output, and I'm proud of the experience that I got to have. Just like, I created that like from my own, credibility and expertise. And so I feel like I have to say those things because when the imposter syndrome does sneak up, it's like, but you're capable of doing this. So like you belong here kind of. Cause I at the end of the day, like I grew up in really a small town in Texas. I never took art classes. So I feel like I always have these kind of thoughts of like not belonging, but like I really felt like I slayed Coachella last year, and it was just like so fun. So yeah, that one's probably my career high.
One thing you mentioned is that it sort of you were imposter syndrome at the interview, and then 5 years later you're managing a team at Coachella, collaborating with a bunch of really cool celebs that you were a fan of. Really, I love the saying that people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5. And that's probably just a perfect example. Like when you were walking in the doors at YouTube, you didn't know if you had that in you. And then 5 years down the line, all of a sudden you've had all these crazy, memorable experiences that have shaped you because you sort of lent into that imposter syndrome and sort of went ahead anyway. You still manage it to this day. Everyone has a little bit of imposter syndrome. And I think that's pretty healthy to have. But how do you manage it on your day to day? How do you rationalize the fact that, okay, yes, I'm scared about something. I don't feel like I'm good enough, but how do you walk yourself through that fear and self-doubt to come out on the other side as a creative or working in the creator space?
Yeah, I've tried a lot of different tricks and things, and I am like the biggest advocate for therapy. Like I feel like I always plug therapy. I'm always talking about therapy. One of my closest friends is a therapist, and I'm always like picking her mind on all of just theoretically stuff. But I feel like I had to just build confidence. Like even what I was just saying to you about how I felt, I was realizing like I'm capable from this project I did. It's just like those reminders, which kind of become affirmations, even if I don't like speak them out loud every day or something. But it's just like those thoughts are reminders of like what I have done and that I can continue to do this. So that's one thing. And then I think, another thing was just launching a business in general in a design studio. I was kind of like, this could completely flop and it's risky financially. And I didn't at the time, like I was going to work with YouTube on like a really small scale, and like someone believed in me enough to give me a real campaign. And that's how I've kind of grown the business with them and then kind of expanded beyond that. But I think what I remember too is like, okay, if this fails, I'll just get another job. Like I moved to New York with 2 suitcases and, got a job working in pharma. Like, and then it's like, you just remind yourself, like each step of the way you moved forward and you got to a new step. And so even if something doesn't go according to plan, like you're alive, it's going to work out. Like it's kind of existential, but I think it really is helpful. And like, I just, last week I had a new client kind of kickoff meeting I'm really excited about. And it's completely outside of the YouTube world. So I think that was another moment of just like, okay, this isn't just like my friends I used to work with. It's like, I'm really like being recognized like a little more widely. But I was kind of like, I had that same imposter syndrome nerve bubble up that was like, should I even be here? Like, I don't know. It's just like those like anxiety thoughts. And I kind of just told myself like, well, you are here. They wanted you here. So you can and should be here. And also if they decide like it's not a good working partnership or something, like on to the next. At least you came for the meeting and you met new people. And like, I think honestly, also this is kind of such a tangent, but even like in dating, if you're like, I went on a bad date, it's like, well, if you went on a date and you know, learned one new thing about something that person was passionate about, it's like not a complete waste of time and stuff. So I don't know, it's kind of like a weird philosophy, but yeah, I think there's always stuff you can take from it, and you'll just continue, like a new day will happen, new things will happen. And it just, I feel like it's a lot of worst case scenario things bubbling up, and you just have to remember, like, it won't ever be as bad as you are afraid of.
So I can heavily relate to everything you're saying. I think I can add some cool thoughts there. So in terms of that worst case scenario stuff, just in my personal experience, I've learned that over the years, I imagine worst case scenario stuff, but at some point along the way, I started leaning into it as like hey, this anxiety thing I have is actually a cool skill. So I trust my gut with things and sort of lean into my intuition, because that helps me make decisions. When I look at that anxiety, I sort of go, okay, I've got fear. I'm fearful of something. This is out of my comfort zone. Okay, why do I feel fear? And then I might get on my phone, and I was trying to bring up some notes that I had about a time that I was feeling fear, and I just write notes about my to myself, from myself, about why I'm feeling the fear, what has gone wrong that's made me feel that way. And I just sort of analyze and rationalize my thoughts, because it's the emotional side of my brain that will get control in that fear, that anxiety, that imposter syndrome moment. It doesn't matter if it's me creating content thinking nobody's going to watch this, or it's not a good piece of content, or it's making a business decision, or doing something else outside my comfort zone. I will mostly do this when I'm driving, and if I'm really feeling distress or something, okay, Jake, why do you feel this way? All right, you feel this way because you're scary, you've never really done this, maybe you haven't had a lot of sleep and you're just a bit anxious, and okay, yep, acknowledged. And I just talk myself through my fear, and I just try to take the blinkers off and look at my own thoughts logically. Like, why? Like, try to step outside my body a little bit, and I'll analyze myself from a third person perspective. And that has really, that changed a lot of things for me when I was able to start doing that regularly. I was able to analyze that imposter syndrome, analyze that self-doubt, analyze the fear, acknowledge it. And that would help me get through whatever challenge I was going through. And a new day would always come. So I'd always look at that as, okay, I got through that thing that last time. This time is going to be no different. I'd still have to go through and talk to myself and rationalize myself. Like, I actually recorded a video on my phone. I was driving around talking to myself. My phone was down in the coffee cup holder, and I was just rationalizing some anxiety. And I put that on TikTok, and that did really well, because people like to see how I was managing those thoughts instead of just sitting there with the blanket covered up and just scrolling on TikToks, to doom scrolling, really, to numb myself. No, I worked through that discomfort. And I think that as a creator, when you experience that imposter syndrome, when you experience that fear of trying something new, or you've got a business decision and you're not sure of, that's something you can lean into, is try to step outside of your body for a moment, objectively look at, why do you think you're feeling that, as if it was your best friend, and analyze that. Where's that fear coming from? Why do you have that imposter syndrome? Just a bit of self-reflection. That's going to help you become a lot more aware of the habits and behaviors you've got that are leading to feel that way and to think that way. And then that can help you change your thinking, switch gears, work through that fear, work through that self-doubt, work through that imposter syndrome, and take the next step forward. And you get really good at that. You just do it again and again and again and again. And eventually it becomes a tool on your tool belt, like a skill that you can just draw on every time you start to feel that way, and you get better and better at managing it, and it gets easier and easier going forward. So that's just something I've picked up at some point, and I've just applied it to everything I do. I think I heard it on a Tony Robbins podcast. He was all like, people just focus on too much of the what's going wrong in their life and not what is going really well. And I think my jaw dropped, hit the floor. I was like, 20 minutes I drove in silence. I pressed pause when he said that, and I just sat there. Then I got to my girlfriend's house, and I sat on the bed, and I just sat there, and I was like, what the hell? And I was like, that's what I've been doing for the last, I think it was like 25 years. I was sitting there, I was like, that's all I do. It's focus on the negative. And from that moment on, I realized that once I experienced those negative thoughts, I'd always try to counteract them. Okay, what are some small positive wins that I've had recently? And then all of a sudden, the scale tipped when it went from negatives to I started adding the positives. Immediately, I felt lighter. That feeling of doubt, anxiety had gone. As a creator, as anyone can do that and implement that into their what they're doing as a creative. Don't just focus on, I'm not growing my Instagram. I only gained 10 followers. Nobody liked that video. Okay, what are some of the positives that you've gained from making that content? And in the broader thing of, say, like the last month, I've grew this many followers. Somebody said they really liked my content. One of my best friends said they felt really inspired. A bunch of random people have messaged me on my Instagram and said, please keep making your content. I feel so validated. Like you got a brand collab from someone who reached out to you. Like there's the positives. There's always little positives somewhere. You just got to look for them. And I think, once you start looking for them, it's going to make that the fear and the doubt and the anxiety disappear a lot easier. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. I feel like I rambled there for quite a bit. What are your thoughts on that, Hunter?
No, there was a lot. I'm like retweet. But I feel like what I love is reframing the anxiety, like you said, is like a skill, or it can even be a good thing. And I think that is like when you reframe it, like, and you're like, well, maybe I am an anxious person, or I overthink things a lot or something, but that overthinking is what has led to your success to this point or something, because, and, like you said, what would you tell a friend? Like I noticed too, my friends, like, the therapist friend I mentioned, she was going to start her own private practice. So we were talking about like, when I went freelance and stuff, and I was like able to see in her, I was like, well, you're a very cautious, methodical person. So you're going to, even if it takes you a little while, like you're going to lay the best foundation for yourself to get there because you are worried. And I think, when you said you filmed yourself and put that online, like I think part of that performing well and like resonating is it makes it seem normal. And I think we think other people maybe aren't overthinking and stuff, but we all are. And I don't know. Yeah. I just feel like there's a lot of good in reframing anxiety as a tool. And that it's not wrong. It's normal is also a big part of it. But yeah, I think that's a really helpful skill.
I think that is a place where we can sort of wrap up the podcast, Hunter, in terms of helping yourself as a creator who's listening to this think about sometimes that you've doubted yourself in the recent last few weeks, posting content, creating content, anything that you've really felt that made you uncomfortable as a content creator. Maybe you've gained some insight into how a couple of other people have been able to sort of regulate and manage a little bit of their imposter syndrome and their anxiety when it comes to creating content. Because my boxing coach always says, when you get in the ring, if you don't have fear, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And there should always be a little bit of fear. There should always be a little bit of anxiety. It's like our safety meter,
Yeah.
And I'd be stupid to get in a boxing ring and feel no fear and then get knocked out because of it, right? So it just helps us. It's a healthy emotion. It isn't something that you should try to shut out entirely.
Right.
I lean into my anxiety a lot now in all aspects of my life as a creator, paid creator, business, where I plan so that I feel less anxious. So I'll write a bunch of stuff down. I'll plan a bunch of content. I'll write it down. Even if I don't act on it, just the act of committing it to paper or typing it out, getting it out of my system. It's a skill set, and the anxiety really helps me plan. I overthink. Yeah, we'll just say I'm an overthinker, but it helps me get everything out of my system that I need to, and then I can really focus on the most logical decision once I get the emotion out. So that's kind of, there's plenty that you could do as a content creator, and you're not alone in the imposter syndrome that you're feeling and that self-doubt and that anxiety of putting out content. Hunter has expressed exactly that. Went for a job interview at YouTube. Didn't think they were going to get the job, got the job, was at Coachella, helping create 600 pieces of content over the week, the weekend or whatever. Like, In your wildest dreams, Hunter, did you ever think that was actually going to happen?
No, there were so many things that have happened in my life. I still just like, I am in disbelief a lot, but I think that is also like where it's important to remember, like you said, like I planned to launch my studio. Like I wanted to signal that I'm available for creators. Like the Had I mentioned, like I've been a fan of this comedian, her podcast since 2017. And that was another moment of just like, wow, I'm literally like in a photo shoot with her. Like I can't believe that she likes my work, like that type of thing. And I think it's the boxing thing you mentioned too makes me think like if you got in a boxing ring and you didn't feel anxiety, it's because you feel safe and you're not really boxing to feel like, not that you want to be unsafe, but that's kind of part of it. And I think when you're creating, if you don't feel anxiety, then you're being safe and you're not, pushing yourself to put out new things and to like try new things. And that's part of what being creative is. So it does make sense that there's going to be like a low hum of anxiety, and that's what makes creating the thing feel good at the end.
Like the reward for effort when you finally press send and it goes out into the ethos and you go, and then you throw your phone. It's like when you send a risky text message, you throw your phone, you're like, I can't look at that.
Totally.
I used to put out a lot of content that was like that, and I was like, I can't look at that. I don't want to look at my followers. What if I get this comment? Oh no, don't look at it. No,
I've done that where like I post Instagram and then like walk the dog, and I'm like, I can't look because it just feels vulnerable, right? Like that's what we were saying earlier. Like when you create something, it is vulnerable. And another just thing I feel like I've worked on. I have this Substack. I write essays about like kind of nerdy pop culture stuff, but it is fun for me. And so it's like, I'm not really doing it because I have this goal to grow it. It's like just an outlet for me, but it feels like, okay, well, there might be people that think like some of my writing is cringe or whatever. But I think it's like, if you feel good about it and you feel like it's honest to your point of view and your experience, like, it is cheesy, but you can't be afraid of what other people think. Like you have to kind of create for yourself first. So I try to come back to that. And I don't know.
No, I think that's a perfect place to put it. Hunter, thank you so much for coming on the pod today to just share your story, how you've worked through things like your imposter syndrome, some cool moments that you've had within your career over the last, how many? It's 2018, 7 years sort of. Moving forward, and everything you've learned and how you started your own studio and just on how you present yourself. And I think I've got a few takeaways for, okay, there's a part that I need to really show myself as a real person on camera. And I think that's what's captivating more people these days is that real, I don't want to say, but authenticity in terms of being a creator. I know, right? The count is
say it now.
The count is going to be at like 101 for that, but I just really appreciate your insights. And I think the creators that are listening to this pod, I think you're going to take a lot from this to help you move forward and post the content that scares the hell out of you. I think, which is so exciting for you as a creator, because the content that scares you that you don't post, you don't know how well it could really do until you post it. And if you think it's scary, it's probably because it's out of the box for you. And if it's out of the box for you, then it's potentially something you actually should post. Think about every scary piece of content you've ever posted. It's that fear will go and you'll forget about it in 30 days or 60 days or a week, so it's not going to linger forever. But Hunter,
look at that. Alex Consani, she was belting Lana Del Rey on the subway, and now she walks for Tom Ford. So it could be anyone.
it could be anyone. It could be you, and that's what we want to leave you with today. So thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It's been super fun, and feel the fear. Post a video anyway. You've got this.